welcome back to Reclaim Within. I'm Ash, and today we're diving into, I believe, a very fascinating and powerful topic, which is how our ancestors' memories live within ourselves and how this ancient connection offers us profound opportunities for remembering who we are, for cultivating connection within ourselves and with the earth, and for healing. If you've listened to my first episode, you know that this is a very vulnerable place for me to be, to be in connection to be writing is one thing, but to be speaking about these concepts that I bring up is just, it brings up another level of vulnerability for me. And what I've done is really reorient myself to calling upon my ancestors and the elemental ancestors to guide me as my resistance and my judgment of myself has come up. It's been really helpful to lean in and connect to source, creator, God, whatever you like to call the beautiful mystery that is our experience, and call upon my ancestors and the elements to guide me to be able to get here. I believe that we come in with bloodline gifts. I believe that we come in to actually clear traumas and hurts that our bloodline has not yet been able to touch. My first introduction to this concept was actually through a book called It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin. Well, that's not true. My first connection to this was through my own lived experience. I had a liver issue come up in my life, and I had been doing a lot of deep work in my lineage and in myself, and a lot of inner exploration and diving into myself. And then I came upon this couple years ago, this issue with my liver. And every time I felt into it, I knew that I was going to be able to clear it. And I knew that it was coming up for me to heal and for me to feel. And it felt like no mistake at all that my father's parents, both of them, had passed away with liver damage. And I feel like at that moment in time, it was my invitation in to what is actually happening here and what's the physical side of things I had on lock. I worked with an amazing functional medicine doctor who helped me so much. But what was happening on the psychological, like the psyche level and the emotional level, and I could connect to my DNA and I could feel there was something shifting for me that was really important to shift. And it felt like it was bigger than me. I just could tell. And that experience, that lived experience, was, I believe, is the most beautiful medicine that we can walk through, is our own lived experience. Like, we are the medicine in our own experiences, in our own lives. Everything else is just a tool to help us connect to our own medicine. That's a big belief of mine. That's what led me to the book It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin. And he confirmed for me a lot of what I was living through and moving through. And then I kept evolving and shifting, and I found this beautiful teacher, Rochelle Saliga, and she led me to a beautiful teacher, Donna Maria. And I've just been falling into myself within this exploration ever since then, deeper and deeper and deeper. So it's been, I don't know, a 3 to 4 year journey of just continual education within my own lived experience, and then with resourcing outside of that. So needless to say, I'm so excited to get to dive into this today. We are more than just our individual experiences, and you'll hear people speak to how our upbringing has affected us so much, and the way that we were parented affected us so much. And I do believe this is true. I actually agree 100% that this is real. And I actually think our parents were doing the best that they could at the time with the tools that they had. That might sting a little bit. It's just, I feel like, what is real. I do think that once you hit a certain age, it is your responsibility to go get those tools. But I don't think everybody in recent history has been resourced enough to actually even have the capacity or the know-how to even know where to go or connect with their heart, because the heart is really the guide that helps us get to that next layer. If ever you're confused or you don't know what to do, meditate on your heart, connect with your heart, put your hand on your heart. Your heart will know. Your heart will know the next right thing to do. It's the seat of the soul, so it will guide you. We are more than our individual experiences. We are more than just what happened to us growing up. There are things that I've lived through that I'm like, I do not understand where this comes from. I cannot track this back. And I have done a lot of inner exploration in my life thus far. I've transformed over and over again. So what we've begun to remember, but this is very ancient wisdom. So it's funny to say that it's something new, but science is catching up. They used to call junk DNA, and now they're finding that this is actually where a lot of our ancestral memories are being stored. And that's from the book, Didn't Start With You. But our DNA holds the imprints of who came before us, their joys, their wounds, and honestly, a lot of their unfinished stories. In both directions, their unfinished stories and the things that brought them so much joy and love, and their unfinished stories of the untended to or the under-resourced wounds that they did not have the inner resourcing to be able to let themselves feel. So today we'll explore how this connection influences our lives and how we can reclaim our wholeness by healing and calling into alignment our highest, truest selves and leaning into the ancestors to actually be able to heal those imprints. So modern science, especially through the field of epigenetics, is showing us that the emotional, physiological, and spiritual experiences of our ancestors are indeed carried in our genetic makeup. These memories are not memories that are going to disappear. They're alive inside of our cells, and they often surface in our lives as patterns. Maybe you keep having the same relationship pattern show up over and over again, and you're unclear of how it even began because it's just been in your lived memory. When those experiences come up, look to what was happening in your immediate family. When you were born, what did your parents live through? What were you in there? But then look beyond that. Like, what patterns are in your lineage that have yet to be healed? It's really fascinating to me when I worked with my clients one-on-one, the patterns they come in with that they're like, I do not understand why this is here. I cannot find the source of this angst. That's where I go to, okay, let's start to dig in a little bit to like what was going on in your parents' lives and your grandparents' lives and what information can we gather. And sometimes it's information we can gather by asking people that we know. And sometimes it's information that we have to gather by just tuning into our heart's knowing. It's not just patterns, it's also challenges. So a really easy one to point to is my husband had challenges reading growing up. And he was diagnosed with dyslexia. His father also had that as well. What my husband and I are now learning is that even though reading words for him is a difficult part of his experience, his ability to see the world in multi dimensions, like in his mind, he literally pictures 3-dimensional experiences. So it's really hard for him to flatten those experiences onto a page with words. And we didn't know this, right? And the teachers didn't know this. So growing up, it's just seen as something that you're not good at versus, oh, this thing that's happening to you is actually pointing to a different gift that you have. Like, this is a wound that has been carried through generations, but it's actually showing us something that you're really great at the other side of things. And so that in itself is even healing, to be able to understand that not everything that is oriented to in our culture as a wound is actually a wound. It's a gift in disguise, which I think is Our bodies are not just vessels for our own personal stories. They carry the stories of our ancestors. And this concept, explored through epigenetics, shows us that our DNA doesn't only carry physical traits, it actually does hold the emotional and physiological imprints of those who came before us. So if our ancestors did experience trauma and hardships, or even deep joy, those experiences can shape the way that our genes express themselves, influencing our physiological, emotional, and mental health. So, for example, studies have shown that the descendants of those who survived extreme trauma, like war or famine, carry physiological and emotional imprints of those experiences. Even if they didn't live through those events themselves, the effects can manifest in their bodies through chronic stress, anxiety, or physical symptoms. And these are not random, they're a part of our cellular memory. So, unhealed wounds actually call us to more wholeness. What's important to understand is that when an ancestor's trauma or wound remains unhealed, it doesn't just fade away. Instead, it's passed down through the generations, often surfacing as the emotional, physical ailments or reoccurring challenges in our lives, like I was speaking to earlier. So these are not here to burden us. Truly, even though they can definitely feel that way. I know when I was going through my ailment with the liver, and I'm not even sure if it started with my grandparents. I think that their way of handling their sensitivities was to go to drinking, which helped numb the overwhelm or the sensitivity in their system. And I don't think that that they were the source of that. I think that that was the symptom of. I also have a very sensitive constitution and I can feel and see through a lot. And I've had to learn to resource myself to be able to walk in this world and feel so much and see so much and know so much, with also being in honor to what that looks like and what that means. And it's probably going to be something I'm working on for a very long time. But they're invitations for healing, like these experiences that we are now moving through or that our bodies are moving through. They're actually calling us into deeper wisdom. One of my teachers says that trauma is inevitable. We all are going to experience trauma. We're all going to inherit trauma. But our ability to integrate the trauma is actually how we cultivate wisdom. Wisdom is born from trauma integrated. So you might notice reoccurring emotions like anxiety, or a big one that's very common is scarcity. I had a lot of overwhelm that I've moved through, and they don't actually always seem tied to your personal experiences, or it's hard to be like, oh yeah, this one thing happened to me and that's why I feel this way. It's like, I've just always felt this way. And that can be really frustrating because we want to know why. That is why I'm loving working with the ancestral pieces with a lot of my clients, is it allows for us to actually broaden the scope. It takes the pressure off of us as having done anything wrong or bad. And it actually is this really beautiful way of honoring the pain of the ancestors in our past and also calling ourselves into a deeper sense of connection with our wisdom. So acknowledging when you have a reoccurring pattern that you're not aware of, asking yourself or getting curious, is this an ancestral imprint? Is this a wound that my ancestors have carried and we're not able to heal? And when we feel these things surfacing, we can bring our awareness to the patterns and begin the work of connecting with them and allowing them to shift by bringing loving awareness to them. I inherited a deep sense of scarcity from one of my lineages, maybe both, to be honest. But it really wasn't just about money. It was about time and energy and a constant sense of not being able to rest. That's my relationship with overwhelm. And it actually wasn't until I started exploring my family's history that I realized that my grandparents had indeed lived through a lot of poverty and famine. And I have ancestors that come from Ireland they went through a really intense period of famine, and then just I have heard stories of my grandparents who they came here and they were not allowed to speak their language anymore that they grew up with. And that puts you into a survival state, I'm sure. And so these patterns that I did not live through still live within me, and they're waiting for someone to come along and connect with them and give them loving awareness and presence and recognize them so that I can then reshape my experience. And this is available to all of us. Like every single human on this earth has the ability to tap into their ancestral lineage and connect to the patterns or the struggles that they didn't have time in their lifespan to connect to, and bring that practice of honoring to them and slowly start to release. I have worked for years to release that fear of scarcity and overwhelm and replace it with a sense of prosperity and connection and trust in myself and in those around me. So, how do you know when ancestral memories are surfacing in your life? These patterns often truly feel larger than life. They feel like they don't seem to be tied to a specific experience that you've gone through personally, but they'll put you on a bit of a roller coaster. You might notice reoccurring emotional patterns like anxiety or fear, and they don't make sense in the context of your life experience. And so these are the ancestral memories that are calling for us to heal with them. Family beliefs are also a big one that are often things that have passed down from generation to generation, and they're clues that something deeper is at play. All of us have ancestors who have unhealed wounds, and it also may show up as chronic health issues. That really was a big one for me. Emotional triggers was also one that I feel like has been passed down in my family system. Both of my grandfathers were war vets, and I do believe that, especially during their era, there wasn't a lot of care for them afterwards. And I think that that really got passed down in my lineage of this reactive, not able to come from a place of presence and responding, but needing to constantly be on guard and be in that reactive space. I do believe that those experiences get patterned into our familial lineage, and after a couple generations, it just becomes normalized. And that's not anybody's fault. It's just that's the way that culture is passed down. That's the way it's passed on. And so to weave a new connection to the ancestors and to weave a new connection with the life we want to live, it's where we get to step into this. People keep speaking about building a new earth. I think it's about remembering where we've come from, honoring that, and then at the exact same time, yes, building new ways of orienting in the world, doing the hard work, taking the time to completely rewire our responses from reactive to really being able to be present in the moment and choose to respond differently versus to react to those around us. And the revolution starts in your own home. It starts with your friends, with your family, with your children, with your cousins. It actually does start there. If we can start to create more loving awareness for the patterns that we've all inherited, especially in those family systems, wow, the revelation and the revolution that can happen from that place is amazing. The beautiful thing about this process and about honoring our ancestors is that we don't have to carry these patterns forever. And the body is always working towards wholeness. Each and every one of our bodies want to orient towards healing and wholeness. That's its innate design. And so once we bring this awareness to these ancestral memories or to these patterns, healing has already begun. Awareness is the first step, as one of my teachers likes to say, to all healing. So I like to connect to my ancestors through prayer. I like to use meditative practices or simply just connecting to them through intention. I like to go for walks and talk to my ancestors. It's a very easy way to just weave in and take the blame and shame off of just ourselves and our immediate family and be able to actually look at this as, oh, we've all inherited this, right? Like even the person in your life, in your family that's been the hardest for you, they inherited specific hurts and pains. they've also probably inherited gifts. And I think this is one of the biggest pieces that I want to bring up is that, yes, we've inherited these traumas and these belief patterns and these ways of being that have maybe no longer serve us. We've also inherited the joys and the gifts from our ancestors. I am so grateful for the gifts I've been able to receive from my ancestors. Our ancestors live in our cells, and their memories, both the joyful, healed ones and the unhealed ones, are a part of our journey. The gifts that our ancestors had innately in their beings get passed down to us as well. And so the dreams that they had, the dreams of the lives that they wanted to live that they didn't get to fully fulfill, we get to step in this time and space and step into those dreams. My brother and I both deeply love music, and I do believe that that was a family inherited gift. I love singing. It feels so good to me. And my brother plays every instrument that he can get his hands on. I feel so blessed to be gifted with those ancestral dreams. And it's been such a fun thing to play with in both of our lives, together and separately. Our ancestors come through our physical beings, our emotional bodies, to actually invite us deeper into a wholeness that maybe they were never able to fully touch because of the survival mode that they were in. So to reclaim the wholeness of our lineage and to free ourselves and future generations from actually carrying the same burdens, I believe is one of the greatest honors of our lives. The fact that we actually have this awareness and this knowledge, and it's being validated by science, which I feel like is so fun when that happens, because I know and I can feel in my bones when something's true. And it's just extra like a cherry on top when somebody or something can validate that's so real for me, because I know that it's real. But that's why I think I had so much fun writing this piece and sharing this podcast with you all today. Is it's really transformed the way that I work with myself and with my clients. And it's taken a lot of the pressure off, because I think that when you invite our ancestors in, when you invoke their memory, when you invoke that energy within you, the strength that you are then given to be able to walk through your day and connect with all of that, it's beautiful. So I'm going to offer a reflection or a prayer for you as you go about your day. I encourage you to tune into your body and your emotions and ask what patterns keep showing up. What memories might your body be carrying from your ancestors? And remember that you have the power not only to heal yourself, but also your lineage, forwards and backwards. So my prayer is that you find the courage to embrace this journey and bring both yourself and your ancestors back into wholeness. Thank you so much for joining me today on this exploration of ancestral healing. If this episode resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to my newsletter on Substack for more insights on healing, wholeness, and connecting to the sacredness of life, or follow my podcast on all of the available sources. Until next time, many, many blessings to you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. Thank you for honoring me on this journey of life by sharing your precious, precious time with me. I appreciate you so very much, and I bless you on your day.